everybody. Welcome to Office Hours with Dylan Hutchison, where I highlight the great people of the channel. I'm joined by none other than Zach. Zach, how's it going, man?
Doing absolutely great, man. Thankful to be here.
Good, good. Zach, I've got to say, I'm a huge fan of your content. I know we're going to get into that a whole lot later, but just the vast amount of education that you push out there with, don't get me wrong, you definitely expect a return, but just the pure education that you push out there for everybody in the channel is great. For those that haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. But Zach, while we kick in, would love to hear an intro of yourself, kind of hear your origin story.
Absolutely, man. And thanks for kicking off with a plug, man. I'll get into the educational stuff more, but
Oh
Tech
yeah,
Degenerates, I think, is where we got to meet. And that was a hot topic. I didn't realize, we do this stuff. We don't know if people are going to watch. You just kind of blast it into the etho and see where it goes. But no, appreciate the shout out at the start. So, as Dylan introduced, I'm Zach Kromkowski, co-founder over at Senteon. We harden workstation servers and browsers to CIS standards. But about me, so joined the company as a co-founder about 4 years ago. And to give the background that maybe everyone doesn't have, we started as a bootstrapped company thinking we could build an EDR company.
oh
Thought we'd
fun.
compete the CrowdStrikes, the S1s. Why not, right? Just four dudes in a basement. We could do that.
Oh yeah,
Turns out we couldn't. Even if we built something, ran the same test, and had the same output, the output isn't what's important, right? Everyone just sees the brand, sees the output. It's not about how you get to the output. So even though we got to the same output a different way, it wasn't meaningful enough to, get attention. It's the marketing dollars. So we tried to take that to market, utterly failed, as every entrepreneur does their first attempt. Made another pivot, thought we'd do some type of like next gen antivirus and target the small, even micro businesses. Man, turns out that's also really hard. Turns out cybersecurity, those SMBs don't always know what it is, right? I think we know
no, as
that.
long as their computer turns on, they're okay.
Yep. So, that wasn't an utter fail. There was some sales associated with that pivot, but not enough to really get traction. But what it did was, and I actually have an exact story. When I went into Senteon, I didn't know what managed service providers were. Well, antivirus solution, you know who needs that? Dentists. Dentists love security. That's kind of what I was hoping for anyway. And I met a dentist, and this dentist actually was willing to be a pilot customer, MVP, adopter, all of this, everything we want. And at the end of the day, he's like, hey, usually my MSP does all this. And I was like, what the hell is an MSP?
You're like, what
So
is this sorcery you speak of?
yeah, and then he's like, oh, well, I service a bunch of dental providers, and they're specialized in the software and everything. And I was like, well, this sounds like someone who could probably help me. I'm looking at it from a go-to-market effort, right? Could sell my solution and manage it. So that kind of kicked off me trying to bring an antivirus or some next-gen solution to the MSP market, which also utterly failed. But what I was able to do, long-winded version of the story, I was able to present to the MSP this long-term roadmap of what we wanted to create. Starting with this AV transitioning, and then that third milestone we had was a system hardening solution. And in every single research conversation I had with MSPs, they were always like, "Hey, I've heard this term, but what do you mean system hardening? What does that?" And that really triggered and something in them to say, "Hey, maybe this is where we need to pivot. It's not a future feature; it's actually the company."
Right.
Hence born the pivot of Senteon.
That's awesome. I love hearing those stories of, it was a great idea initially. I've got to tell you, hey, we're going to build an EDR. Hey, you were there to revolutionize. But you're right. It's not what the market immediately needed. I mean, you'd spend
hmm
$1 billion in marketing funds and then also going after the right market.
Yep.
So I do want to kind of point in there, double click in there. You've not always been in the channel.
That's right.
So how has your journey been diving into the community? How far along in the Senteon journey did the channel come to fruition? And talk to me about that.
This is a really good question. So I probably have one of the more untraditional journeys into the cybersecurity world. So I actually got my degree in business management, marketing, and my own franchise model. I was selling business to consumer home restoration projects, right? That was really my initial entry to the professional world. And after that, I was like, okay, I want to go into sales. I sold soda pop for Pepsi, sold food manufacturing conveyor belts actually after that. And it started to feel very repetitive, just kind of selling at the same product over and over. And at that point, I was like, okay, I want to switch. So I started to look into software sales. Wasn't necessarily security specific, although I did fall into that. I was at the time in this point in my life, I was Motley Fool subscriber, and they were talking about cybersecurity is the hottest thing in the world. This is,
Oh yeah.
say, 2017, 2016. So I was applying to all the big ones, and just some other software ones like Twilio and Zoom even, right? And I realized I don't know these companies. It was hard for me to comprehend what they did, but I had a colleague I met at Purdue while I was getting my computer information technology minor. And this colleague of mine, I would call him up and I'd be like, hey, I have an interview with this company. Do you have any insight? Can you help me out? Like, they're telling me to make a presentation deck. I mean, you've applied for sales roles. Like, sometimes they tell you to do homework before the interview.
Oh yeah.
So, so I'd ask him. He'd basically interview, prep me, help me understand the company, and he did this a handful of times to where I started getting job offers. And when I finally got like a job offer I told him I was going to take, he goes, "Hey, completely up to you. We wouldn't be able to pay you, but me and two of his co-founders at the time were looking at taking a product to market within the next few months." This was that EDR I talked about, and I was like, "Okay, so." You're inviting me to basically take your product to market, this MVP. I've never done the software, never done anything. I was like, us sales guys, we got some ego. I'll give it a whirl.
You're like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
That's right. So I went ahead and did that, talked to my wife. I was, I think, either engaged or at least close to married at that point, whatever time frame it was. And like, hey, I would be going without a salary. Is this a risk we can financially take? Is this the right move? And ultimately we said, hey, give it a whirl. And holy crap, it has been a whirl ever since. That was about 4 years and 3 pivots ago.
That's awesome. I mean, got to give a special shout out to your wife for letting you take that jump. I'll give a special shout out to my fiance, Sammy. She is the one that actually pushed me to join Shield. I was at a very, very comfortable MSSP, MDR provider in the Midwest. It was a great job. Loved working with the company. And then when Teddy and Michael approached me, she was like, hey, this is a really good opportunity. Go take it. I was like, whoa, you're the one telling me to take the risk here. All right, I'm all about it. So, you mentioned the 3 pivots. So you pivoted from EDR to configuration management compliance. Then the channel? Talk to me about how, the dentist's office said, hey, you need to talk to my MSP. You're like, I'm trying to understand the world of MSP. Did that one MSP open you up to the world of managed service providers, or did you just, spark some curiosity and research it on your own?
It really sparked the curiosity, and it's really funny. So the very first MSP I got on the phone with, I absolutely botched the research call. I had no clue what I was doing, and he's still like someone on my wish target list. I'm like, I would love to get back with this guy. I'm like, hey, we actually built the thing that I stuttered talking to you years ago. Like, I'd love to get his today feedback. Hey, like, we made it. Like, you were the first. Like, can I say thank you? And he won't respond to my LinkedIn messages. We have a whole chat history, but it's just me. But it really was getting our first traction in the MSP. I realized I could land meetings easier, right? I wasn't just sending messages with no response. I realized there was peer groups, networking channels I could start to get involved with and actually meet people in the space, as opposed to enterprise, where it was really hard just to even land a meeting, first of all. No enterprise wants to do a research call to help innovative solutions. While MSPs, although, and maybe you'll agree with this or not, maybe are not the most eager to adopt a brand new technology that's extremely innovative and new, they're usually willing to learn about it. They're always willing to talk about it. And that's what I found. So it really just opened my eyes about, wow, this is an area I can connect with, I can be casual with, and just be myself without really having to put on that enterprise sales hat. So I really, really just fell in love with that. And what it became was, to our business model today, I still only sell direct to the managed service providers or security service providers, but we have our VAR relationships or distributor to where if we get an enterprise lead, we just hand it off to either the MSP if they need that, or just the VAR in the area for that case. And that's really where I want to continue to take the company. Hopefully, soon enough, I don't have to wear both hats, where I'm managing the VAR relationships and direct sales.
Yep.
So hopefully, there's a channel manager out there listening that maybe hits us up in a handful of months.
So, I mean, I've got a whole group of, I'll give a shout out to the channel leaders and also the MSP vendor Slack groups. There's
Yep.
a lot of channel leaders in those groups that might be looking for a job.
Yep.
And for those that are out there listening, I can't say enough good things about Zach and the company, so you're going to be in good hands if you go over there. But you're right, it is a completely different model going from the MSP to the VAR and distribution route. That's something that, me, myself, as a, fairly early channel leader building out the program, very different in the approach on the account management level, and then just,
I mean, how much do we give away for free? Like we talked about the educational content and the webinars we do, but even like the product, we just kind of hand it out.
Oh yeah. I think that's really healthy though, in some respect.
I do too.
I love the freemium approach, the community editions. I'll even shout out one of my quasi-competitors, kind of a co-opetition with SOC Radar. They've got a really great external attack surface management platform, and they'll give you a scan away for free. They've also got, cyber threat intelligence, all of that stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, they're great job. So I like the free community editions because it provides value, and we'll get into that with the content. And that's what we're really all driving for, because I'm not somebody that's going to hammer the dials and cold call 1,000 people a week. I'd much rather provide some good quality content or give something away for free in return for, hey, maybe let's generate some interest.
Yep, I think that was one of the biggest things I tried to focus on, because we're a small team, right? Today there's only 6 of us, and I'm primarily the only one who does anything external, whether it's marketing, onboarding, success, sales, whatever it is, right? It's really comes down to me. So you want me to do all of those responsibilities of everything external and try to hit, everyone says 100 cold calls a day is what you have to do. That's the only way to take a product to market. That's the only way you'll be successful. And I spent 2023 trying to identify, okay, what can I create that has value that people would actually want to learn about, want to listen to, and a database of knowledge that people would want to see, right? And that goes hand in hand with the freemium resource that we've created today. And now I still don't do those cold calls, and it's all inbound lead generation and a lot of Reddit posting. I do a lot on Reddit, which is interesting enough. The channel loves Reddit.
Yes, they do. I'm very active in r-MSP and then some of the ancillary. So, like, we do a lot in identity security, specifically on Active Directory. So I post a lot in r-Active Directory and stuff like that. No, I mean, it's the way to engage with your audience in a meaningful way, at least in my opinion. That social selling, the referral network that we're building up, it's one of those things. I hate to sound, like a jerk with this, but it's like I'd much rather spend my time nurturing those connections, building those, meaningful relationships. Those are going to close way more deals than me hammering 100 calls a day.
And
it works with scale.
I think the other challenge is too, right? Even if you close, say, 100 new MSPs, right? They typically, an MSP, in my experience, they buy a product and they use it where needed, right? Even if your solution can fit their entire client base, if they don't know you, if you don't have that relationship, they're not going to be inclined to even bring it to the other clients. And that's where I 100% agree with you. It's like, I don't need 100. I would much rather, instead of having 100 MSPs, I'd rather have 20 that are truly in depth, loving the product, talking about the product, using the product. Like, I would much rather manage 20 loyal clients, partners, rather than 100 that are kind of getting back to me.
Yeah, that's the phase that we're in as well at Shield. Is we're building up that small, like, raving fan partner base.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. I would love for a day down the road for us to just be, deploying at mass.
Sure.
But there's a lot that needs to happen there in terms of documentation, enablement material. I don't think I will ever get away from whether, building out a team of CAMs and technical account managers, of letting go of that really hands-on approach of guiding them through the onboarding journey. But kudos to those that have figured out how to.
There's a lot of cool solutions on the market too. I've always wanted to implement it into our tool, but it's just been, whether we didn't want to dedicate the resources or not, whatnot. But we have the freemium model, right? And we have our documentation. And next week we have a pretty sizable UI update. So I'm going to do a bunch of how-to tutorial videos which, man, that on top of everything else is absolutely overwhelming. So please, once I post those, watch them and use them. But
Everybody share them, and yeah.
everyone share. If you're a Senteon user, just watch the videos. I'm going to try to create a video for every question I've been asked. But it's a lot to do that. And if you can just build that raving fan base and whatnot first, I mean, that's absolutely the difference maker for a lot of the companies coming to market.
Yeah. And speaking of, the raving fan bases, giving back to the partners, you are huge on content education. You just mentioned that how-to, which, in my opinion, again, the correct approach to going after the market. Why did you choose, when you were going after your go-to-market journey, your go-to-market plan, why did you choose this route over, maybe outsource BDRs or something of that nature?
So we started completely bootstrapped. So one, it was just a resource effort. We had Zach. We didn't have $100,000 in the bank. So this was the only approach. But the BDR strategy, SDR, extremely effective and can work at scale. But in our position as an innovative, basically category, I don't want to say category to start. We're basically a new category. If you talk to any MSP today, when you ask them, hey, do you do proactive attack surface remediation? That key piece of remediation is where MSPs typically say no. And then I go deeper, okay, what about hardening, changing security configurations? And for them, they go, no, that's going to break stuff, right? Well, that's good security. Sometimes can break stuff, right? Changing security, reducing the attack surface may break stuff, but it's reducing quite the amount of risk where you have to do that. You have to prioritize it, learn the processes and whatnot. So for Senteon, being this innovative new category that has never been SaaS, never been automated before, an SDR or BDR would have had to do so much educational ramp up, dialed so many phone numbers to find just one person interested. If an SDR called an MSP, hey, we can harden your workstations so that they're locked down more. Oh, so you're going to stop them from working? The SDR would really quite have the obstacle to overcome. And it'd be a lot of training, a lot of bandwidth from me, taken away from the value creation material that I do. So, yeah, for us, it just made more sense as a new category that we had to really just do it in-house.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And then also on the time spent, resources side, you would have had so much time just qualifying yourself. It would have been a lot of unqualified meetings, which is, fine for getting your name out there, but not necessarily for building a business and trying to get pipeline in the door.
Yeah, I think qualified meetings are probably one of the best things for us because we're so niche. We harden workstation servers and browsers to CIS standards. There's 9 words in that one sentence. If those words don't mean anything to you, may not be the right company to call. So it's very rare that an inbound lead is not a fit.
Yep. So Zach, you are uber passionate about CIS. Talk to me about why CIS, and then also this is where I want to plug the content that you're creating, not just on the how-to videos, but on a weekly basis.
Dude, I appreciate that plug. So CIS is extremely impactful to Senteon. So I talked about the pivots we made. I firsthand experience was trying to take a brand that had never been heard of, a product that had dozens of competitors, to a MSP, at some points a small business, right? And I had to tell them, hey, trust us over the other guy. We are the answer. We are that solution, right? And it's just a constant uphill battle of trying to basically defend your position in the market. So Q, our learnings, our pivot, CIS. CIS, for those of us listening who don't know, they're basically a nonprofit that comes up with the best practices to lock down Windows workstation servers, browsers, Azure, Zoom, even Google. They just have dozens of different recommendations, and they built an 18 control process of priority steps of where to start, where to mature, basically a roadmap for MSPs to have a better security posture. And it was at this point where hey, we already get all of our recommendations through CIS. That's how we know what to harden, what to change. What if there was a way we could partner with them? And they had this sponsorship, so we coughed up money for that as bootstrapped owners. And I can start going to these meetings and saying, hey, this authoritative body has these recommendations. We've built a solution that can change 1,000 of your settings to what they say. it now shifted from, hey, why should I trust you, to, oh, you're doing something that's already proven and trusted. So that's really what started it, was really a sales methodology for me
Yeah.
personally. But for the other much more technical co-founders, they're already leveraging it anyway. They knew the value. I just looked at it as a marketing opportunity initially, till I really got into it, right? I mean, we're in sales during this call, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And what it turned into, again, like I've been in the MSP space now for a couple years, and I still come across not inbound leads, but if I go to a trade show or if I'm networking with someone, one of the first things I would ask is, hey, do you know what CIS is? And I noticed only about 20% of the MSPs I talked to said yes.
Really?
Now, we met in the Tech Degenerate group, right? They have a channel dedicated to CIS. So very skewed. But these shows I'd go to, a lot of people would say no, and I didn't even know how to explain what CIS was. So that's something I really had to teach myself, and I realized, oh, okay. So that's how new this is. So I said, okay, if they don't know what CIS is, but they know what hardening and security configuration management is, how can I create that urgency and get the word out there? So what this became was, okay, how can I tell the MSP by changing security configurations what type of risk is being mitigated? So just like we were talking about before the show, I got some of our best partners and I said, hey, I'm going to rewrite all 1,000 of these security settings, and I'm going to talk about each setting individually from a risk point of view. And then I want you to come join my show, and I want you to be the SME to talk about why you also agree this is a good thing to do for your security, what types of risk it mitigates, and now today that's evolved from CIS themselves even noticing about the series and saying, hey, we'd want to contribute to the show. So now there's a resource, a CIS co-host joining it, and the newest thing, which I'm just now starting to do, everyone knows how hot reels are getting, right? So now with that guest, I'm now bundling like 5 to 15 reels and just tossing it over to the MSP because I try to do a lot of intro questions to help them market themselves. So now, I don't know, maybe I'm going too large, but I am tired, but it seems to be effective so far.
Yes, you absolutely are tired. It is a lot of work for anybody that hasn't dove into video editing to take an hour-long webinar, break it up into those clips. It's a lot of work. But I would say it's hugely impactful for your MSP partners because, I mean, you've sold the micro-SMB with your awesome revolutionary EDR product. It's really hard to talk about and associate risk with changes that we're making as technology service providers. You go in, we talked about this earlier, is, hey, does my computer turn on as an SMB? Okay, I'm good. Then transitioning to it, it's a risk acceptance and risk mitigation strategy conversation. And that's why that's important. So you putting the tool for your MSP right there, especially with a, call it a governing body with CIS, I mean, it shows a level of trust, a thought leader in the space. For them being able to market this to their customer, I would say that is the absolute right move. I understand it is a lot of work, but
it is a lot of work.
I would have to imagine your MSP partners appreciate that more than you know.
I hope so. It's my 2024 initiative to try to give back more because, everyone hears like all these companies are just doing more and more for their MSPs, and I love that, and I know I have a platform where I can do that, right? I've taken the time to build up my connections, build up my profile to where, hey, I now have the skills of video editing for whatever limitation that is. The UI has just gotten easy enough for me to use. By no means am I technical enough to do true video editing. But it's gotten to a point where I'm like, hey, you're busy, I'm busy, but you're my customer, so I'm willing to invest that time because I know you're going to treat me better and better down the road.
Yep. So on that note, talk to me about some challenges or maybe some misconceptions that MSPs come to you with mapping to CIS or maybe adopting CIS.
Yes, this is the biggest thing. I kind of hinted at it with why I did the webinar series, but if I implement CIS, specifically hardening, specifically what we do is CIS benchmarks, which feed into the CIS controls, for those of us aware. But the biggest challenge and still today is if I harden my machine, it's going to break. They won't be able to access their applications. My workflows internally will no longer allow it to work. And this is the largest myth and probably my biggest obstacle, to answer your question directly, because the majority of our customers all have over probably 98% of the level 1 CIS benchmarks implemented. And of those 98% of doing it, a lot of them didn't even have to change any. They just deployed and they were good to go, right? Because the way our solution is broken up, there's level 1, level 2, and then next generation settings. And it's not how we break it up. It's all about how CIS breaks it up. And those L1s are not intended to be impactful. So where did the myth come from that hardening my device will break everything? I don't know, but that's probably my 2024 mission to disrupt that myth and show people, hey, reducing your attack surface doesn't have to break anything.
And showing them that it's not like an ungodly painful process because they've got somebody like you to help guide them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's the reason innovative vendors like us can come to market is because this process, I mean, so I always laugh at this, and I'll send you the video after, but I went to CyberQP, fantastic forum, little trade show, and they let me give a 39-second pitch, and went on stage in front of everyone, and I brought with me a 1,500-page box, and this was printed CIS recommendations, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but somewhere in my pitch was just like, would you want to ask your security engineer to read this on the flight home today? Well, can't imagine they'd get through it on the flight or over the next year. Our solution is going to make it so you don't have to.
That is brilliant. Talk about, oh my gosh, I am totally ripping that off. I just want to let you know that.
Well, make sure you drop the box on stage. The only critique I got is I didn't drop the box from high enough, but I didn't want to break the platform I was on.
Oh, because there was that many pages.
Yeah, because it got the attention of the crowd, because everyone's hearing these pitches, these presentations, and you've been to trade shows. You tune out.
Eloquent pitches.
You start to tune out.
Fuck this.
So look at this box, and I just dropped it on the stage, and everyone, started looking up. It's like, oh, I got to re-engage. There was a loud boom.
Yep. That is so brilliant. Sam, if you're listening to this, we're going to have to print off every vulnerability that was disclosed in 2023. That's going to be a lot of paper.
Yeah, and I mean, it was very impactful. I got a lot of compliments on it, and I think there were only 70 MSPs at that show, but I mean, that was the first show I've ever done, the first thing Senteon's ever sponsored, and I've talked to Jim and Jimmy about it, and I'm like, that was my first time ever doing this, talk in public, wearing this shirt outside of the computer screen. That was my first time, right? And I was able to get about, I think the final count was like 27 scheduled meetings. Like over damn near half of that room came over for a follow-up, and I was like, this was awesome. So that was really eye-opening to me, and it really showed how much you have to do to stand out, because damn, there's a lot of content out there, and there's a lot of noise, and it's easy to blend even in person.
But that's where the quality comes into play. And what you're putting out and then the conversations you're having, that is true quality. And that's what's going to stand out across the fluff or the FUD of marketing that we're coming across today. I mean, I see so many, LinkedIn posts or ads that me, even as a vendor that studies other vendors' marketing, I just scroll right by it because I'm like, oh yeah, that's not for me, whatever. And so it's really hard to stand out. But that's where it's, maybe it's a love language or, a job of love.
It's a labor.
Labor of love. That's the term.
Labor of love, yep.
Where you're going and making that content for the MSPs. So with that in mind, before we wrap up here, I want, people to know how to get a hold of you, maybe subscribe to some of that content. Where, can they find your resources to learn more about CIS hardening?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll drop some links into the chat. But one more thing about the labor of love, and I'm curious what you think about this. We scroll on LinkedIn constantly. I mean, my profile is primarily a banner for Senteon. It's not even Zach at this point, right? And when we scroll by, let me restart. I'm constantly asked, like, what's Senteon's competitors, right? And I'm curious your input on this, because our biggest competitor is like any cybersecurity's marketing. Right? They always say they already do this. They do system hardening. They do it all, right? So, and I'm not, obviously, I believe we have a great solution, very biased towards my own company, right? But how do quality cybersecurity vendors get heard when they don't have the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get heard? I'm curious. Have you came across that challenge? Is that something you've dealt with?
You spend $20,000 to bump your post. No, I'm kidding. I think it goes back to creating that raving fan base, to be honest with you. Having those, no matter what market you're serving, whether it's the SMB, mid-market, enterprise, or in the channel with the MSP space, I think it's having the other MSPs kind of clue in and talk about your content there. I think that's one of the big differentiators that I see. You know, you look at some of the billion-dollar providers, regardless of where you're at in cybersecurity. I think that goes in with the, you know, personal brand aspect to it. You know, you scroll through the Shield page. Sure, there's posts with good interaction, but the ones with the real great interaction are, you know, on our internal team's pages, because it's a personal brand rolling up through the corporate brand. But to your point of how do you stand out, I really think it's the power of, you know, your prospects listening to their peers. So maybe if you could go in and do, you know, group content. I saw that you've got some with other MSPs. I would say that's one great way to stand out, and I would recommend any vendor do that, whether it's, you know, getting involved, getting your partner advisory council, or maybe some of your key partners and customers involved, so they can share their thought leadership with their peers of, hey, here's how Senteon has changed my business, and here's how it could change yours. Yeah.
All right. Oh, I appreciate that. You know, wanted to get your input on that, because it is daily challenge. That's really what I wake up and think about. How can I add value to my profile today? And man, there's only so many ways to post content.
Yes, there is. And that's where, I mean, I'm going to specifically call out Eric Bowles. Eric, either comment down below, connect with Zach directly. I know you will have just a Bible of advice for us here. So comments preferably, but then connect with Zach.
Perfect. But yeah, no, happy to toss some links in the comments. But just final plug, you know, Senteon workstation server and browser hardening, reducing the attack surface, and actually performing the remediation. Plenty of tools that do scanning, but that remediation aspect is where the time consuming and the effort actually comes in, is where we're working to automate. So it is a freemium. I'll drop all the links in the chat, and I'll even drop the resource hub that I've been creating in all 1,000 of the configurations that I rewrote myself. A lot of time and blood and sweat and tears into it.
Oh yeah, I can tell you right now that that's not something that I look forward to reading one by one, but just to let you know that I got value out of it. I will at least scroll through.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thanks so much for joining, and look forward to talking soon.